everybody, welcome to Chapter 9. Today we're going to focus on Day 0, Section 9.1, Multiplying and Dividing Rational Expressions. So today's goal is going to be multiplying and dividing. So we will be simplifying rational expressions. So when we hear rational expressions, we're just thinking fractions. Okay, so we're going to start off doing a little bit of review, dealing just with multiplying and dividing fractions with numbers, and then we will move on to the expressions. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to zoom in on our first examples. All right, so the first one we're going to do is we are going to simplify 9 divided by 16 times 4 divided by 5. Now, what I like to do is I like to work horizontally. Okay, so we multiply numerator times numerator, and we multiply denominator times denominator. There is no need for common denominators here. So what we will get is 9 times 4 is going to give us 36, and 16 times 5 is going to be 80. And now we just simplify a fraction like we usually do. And what do they both have in common? They both have 4's in common. So 36 divided by 4 would give us 9. And 80 divided by 4 would give us 20. And we cannot simplify this any further. So our final answer is 9/20. So that's one route we can take. Another route that we can take, and this is the way I'm going to be kind of simplifying the rest from here on out, is I simply rewrite this as 9 times 4 over 16 times 5. And instead of actually multiplying these numbers out, I just see what can cancel right away. So I notice that a 4 and 16, those can simplify. So 4 over 16, I would be left with a 1 up top and a 4 down below. And now when I go ahead and multiply, 9 times 1 is simply 9, and then 4 times 5 is 20. This kind of saves me from having to deal with big numbers like, 36 over 80, and then simplifying it from there. I just think this is a nicer way to go, but whatever you are more comfortable with, you go right ahead. Okay? All right, so the second example B, I want you to try. Okay, so go ahead, try it, see what we get, and then we'll check that tomorrow in class. Okay, so let's move on to example C now. This is a little different because now we are dividing. Okay, so we have 3/8 divided by 5/12. Well, whenever we are dividing by a fraction, we always change this division to multiplying. Okay, so multiplying is a lot easier. So we are really going to multiply by the reciprocal of the ratio that follows the division sign. Okay, so we're going to take the reciprocal of that 5/12. So what this is going to look like is this is really saying 3/8. I'm going to change it to multiplied by the reciprocal, so 12/5. Okay, and so we can go ahead and rewrite this as 3 times 12 over 8 times 5. And now we can go ahead and say, okay, does 3 simplify with anything in our denominator? No. But does 12? Yes. 12 and 8 each have a common factor of 4. So 12 divided by 4, I'm going to be left with a 3. 8 divided by 4, I'm going to be left with a 2. And now nothing else simplifies from here, so I can go ahead and multiply the numerator. So 3 times 3 will give us 9. and 2 times 5 is going to give us 10, and we should notice that we can't simplify 9/10 any further, so there's our final answer. Okay, so just a quick refresher, I want you to quickly do D on your own. Okay, and once you finish D, we will move on to simplifying expressions. Okay, dealing with some variables. So let's move on to this first example here, where we are now going to simplify expressions that have some variables in it. Okay, so we have 15x to the 4th times y divided by 25x to the negative 2 y to the 5th. Now, if you recall from previous chapters, whenever we have negative exponents, we got to make them happy. Okay? So, the first thing I'm going to do is move this x to the negative 2 on up to the numerator. All right? Make that x happy. So, our first step is going to look like 15 x to the 4th, and I'm going to put that x to the positive 2 right next to it, times y, divided by 25 y to the 5th. And now I just simplify any like terms. Numbers are like terms, and then common bases are like terms. Okay? So we've simplified kind of horizontally, and then we'll simplify vertically. So again, looking at my numbers here, 15 and 25, we should recognize they each have a 5. So if I pull a 5 out of 15, we're left with a 3. And if I pull a 5 out of 25, we are left with a 5. All right. So we'll have a 3 up in our numerator. We'll have a 5 in our denominator. Now let's focus on these x's. Okay, x to the 4th times x squared. If you remember our exponential properties, when we are multiplying common bases, we add the exponents. So it's going to become x to the 6th power, and that's going to stay in our numerator. And now when we look at our y's, we have y to the 1st power essentially over y to the 5th. Well, there are more y's in the denominator, so the y's are going to stay in the denominator, and I subtract my exponents this time, so I'll have a y to the 4th power in our denominator, and this is as good as it's going to get. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to our next example here. Okay, example 2. So we've got 5x squared times y over 2xy cubed times 6x cubed y squared over 10y. So what I like to do first is I like to work horizontally. Okay, combine the numerators, combine the denominators as best we can before we start combining vertically. Okay, so I will rewrite this. So I put all my numbers up front. Okay, so we have a 5 times 6. Then we have x squared times x cubed. When we're multiplying, we are going to add the exponents. So we really have x to the 5th power. Then we have a y times a y squared. When we add those exponents, we get y to the 3rd power. So there's our cleaned up numerator horizontally, and now let's do the same with our denominator. So I put the numbers up front. So 2 times 2 times 10. Here I only have one x, so x to the 1st power. Then we have a y cubed times a y. So that's going to give us to y to the 4th power. All right, and now we just look to simplify vertically. Okay, so now we're working across our division sign. So 5 times 6 divided by 2 times 10. Well, I noticed that 5 and 10 have a 5 in common. So I'll divide each by 5, and that's going to leave me with a 1 and a 2 in the denominator. 6 and 2 also simplify. They have a 2 in common, so that's going to be a 1 and a 3. Okay, so if I rewrite this, 1 times 3 is going to be a 3 in the numerator. 1 times 2 will leave us with a 2 in the denominator. Now let's combine our x's. We have an x to the 5th over an x to the x to the 1st. Well, there are more x's in the numerator, so x's will stay in the numerator. 5 minus 1 will give us x to the 4th in our numerator. And now let's take a look at our y's. Y cubed over y to the 4th. There's more y's in the denominator, so they're going to stay in the denominator, and I will just have y to the 1st power. Okay, and now we are done. Okay, so first we combine horizontally, and then we combine vertically. Okay, so let's move on and try the next 2 examples really quickly. All right, oops. Okay, here we go. So as you notice, these next 2 examples are dealing with division. Okay, so we've got this division. And what did we say up above? Instead of dividing by a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so we're going to multiply by the reciprocal and change this right away. So we really have 16m t squared over 21a to the 4th b cubed times the reciprocal, so 7a squared b squared over 24m cubed. Okay, so now we can combine horizontally. And by doing this, I just rewrite my numbers. I don't try and multiply 16 times 7. No need to do that. So I just rewrite it as 16 times 7. And then kind of a rule of thumb, when you're writing out the variables, I typically write them in alphabetical order. So I would write a squared, b squared. I can't combine anything. I've got an m and then a t squared. So there's really no combining our numerator any better than that. Just rewriting it as one numerator. Then we have 21 times 24, a to the 4th, b cubed, m cubed. Okay, so now we've combined horizontally. Let's go ahead and combine vertically. Okay, so I noticed that 16 and 24, they have an 8 in common. So 16 divided by 8 would give me a 2. 24 divided by 8 is going to give me 3. 7 and 21 each have a 7 in common. So 7 divided by 7 will leave us with a 1. And then 21 divided by 7 is 3. So just kind of cleaning everything up, 2 times 1 will give us 2 in the numerator. 3 times 3 will give us 9. Okay, now let's look at our a's. We have an a squared over an a to the 4th. There are more a's in the denominator, so they stay in our denominator, and I subtract. So we'll have an a squared in the denominator. Taking a look at the b's, b squared over b cubed. There are more b's in the denominator, so they stay in the denominator and we subtract, getting b to the 1st power. Looking at our m's, there are more m's in the denominator, so m to the 1st over m cubed will leave us with m squared in the denominator, and there's no other t's to combine that t squared with, so that's going to stay right up in the numerator. So we'll have a t squared up there, and there is our final answer. Okay, so we just have to be careful changing that division to a multiplication. Okay, let's quickly try example 4, and then I'll let you loose a little bit. Okay, so again, notice here we have a division. So we're going to change that to multiplying by the reciprocal. So let's go ahead and do that step. So we still have 12 x to the fourth y squared over 40 a to the fourth b to the fourth. Now it's going to change to multiply by the reciprocal. 16 a squared x over 6 x squared y to the fourth. Okay, let's go ahead and combine horizontally. So my numbers go up front, 12 times 16. And if we notice here, we've got an x to the fourth and an x. Oh, I want to put my a squared first. There's nothing to combine there, and putting everything in alphabetical order will make everything more organized. Now let's go back to this x to the fourth x. Combining those, we add those exponents and we get x to the fifth power. There's nothing to combine with that y squared, so it stays y squared. Our denominator, we have a 40 times 6, a to the fourth, b to the fourth, x squared, and y to the fourth. Okay, now let's go ahead and combine vertically. So I notice this 12 and 6 has a 6 in common, so 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then we can even go further, 16 and 40. They each have they each have an 8 in common. So 16 divided by 8 will be 2. 40 divided by 8 will be 5. Okay, and I only have a 2 times 2 in the numerator, which will be 4. That's not going to simplify with any of those numbers. So let's go ahead and clean things up. 2 times 2 is 4 in the numerator. 5 times 1 leaves us with 5. Comparing our a's, we have an a squared over a to the fourth. More a's in the denominator, so they stay there. And I subtract, so a squared. I don't have any other b's besides this b to the fourth in the denominator, so it's going to stay in the denominator. Taking a look at our x's, we've got x to the fifth over x squared. There are more x's in the numerator, so they stay in the numerator, and we subtract. 5 minus 2 will give us x cubed. Looking at our y's, y squared over y to the fourth. More y's in the denominator, so we subtract and they stay in the denominator, y squared, and there is our final answer. Okay? All right, getting down to the last example here. I will get you started, and then the rest is on your own. Okay? So, first thing I notice with this example here is we've got a negative exponent with that z to the negative 2. Okay, so we're going to have to move that down in the denominator to make that z happy. Okay, I also see this negative 1 exponent here, this negative 1. So what we can do right away is this is saying everything inside of these parentheses is not happy. Okay, the whole thing's being raised to the negative 1. So what I can do is I can just switch the numerator and denominator, and then that will make this a positive 1. So our first step, we've really got this 20 x squared y to the sixth. That z to the second, or to the negative 2, will go down in the denominator, over 3a cubed c squared, and now this z to the second. It is now a positive z squared. Okay? Times, and again, I'm just going to flip the numerator and denominator of this second fraction here. So this is going to look like 9acz over 16x cubed y cubed. Okay, So there's kind of the cleaned up version. You have to take care of those negative exponents first, and now you try the rest. Okay? Show us what you get tomorrow in class. Okay? If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, have a great night. Bye.